All right, welcome to another exciting, wonderful episode of Going the Distance, the Rocky Series podcast. I am your host, Ryan. I just want to say that I'm very excited to be podcasting again. We've just released Creed 2, Episode 10 on the feed at the time of this recording. It was released today, but whenever you hear this, who knows when that is. I'm really excited to be podcasting again because I was away for 4 months with the Canadian Navy on deployment in the South China Seas and surrounding countries. I love podcasting, and I love doing it with my friends. Though they're all virtual, I think these podcasting friends that I've made are literally like some of the best friends I have because they make me laugh, they make me happy. It's a new world we live in anyways. It's a virtual world. We're turning to Ready Player One with every passing year. With me today, as you can already tell probably from the show description, is Mr. Craig Cohen from the Slycast, the Godfather podcast.
Welcome back to It's good to see you. And it looks like, were you taking like vitamin D or something on the ship, or is my imagination of what it's like to be at sea a little different than reality?
What do you mean? Am I too bright? I just have a white light on. Is it too bright?
No, I mean, you look healthy. Like, you always, you weren't in the submarine, right? I mean, you were able to see sunlight.
I am able to see sunlight, but my job is inside the ship. Most jobs are inside the ship. There's very few of them are. You're not outside the ship actually very much. Once you're actually out sailing and doing the job, the majority of the ship's company is inside of the ship. There's really nothing to do outside the ship, if that makes sense. Unless you're in the bridge, you're not really doing anything outside the ship.
Right.
Yeah. I'm in what's called the operations room, which is like the combat headquarters, so to speak, and it's dark and cold, so I didn't actually see a lot of sun. I'd go 2 or 3 weeks without going on the upper decks. I was like, ugh, I'll just go to bed, do my watch, go to bed, do my watch. We call our bed racks. And every time we go to our racks, we call it our time machine. It just kills time.
How much did it look like something out of Under Siege?
Well, we didn't have anyone jumping out of a cake, which is unfortunate.
Well, you know what? It's funny. Well, it's not funny, but I mean, I felt your pain a little bit while you were not able to sort of catch all of the Rocky versus Drago stuff as it was happening. I mean, I do know you were able to watch the documentary, but like you weren't able to watch the actual film, and I know that gutted you because like so many people were talking about it and you couldn't listen. But I know there were like a couple of instances where like there were discussions about it that you were tangentially involved with. So I was like, oh, Ryan's getting spoiled here.
Yeah, I was torn because there's no way I could not be involved with the discussions either on my Facebook or Twitter feeds for the show. If you haven't already, come join Going the Distance on Facebook and Twitter. And there's no way I could have avoided just being on those social medias at sea, because the one thing is I was able to stay on social media while I sail. I just can't stream. I can't really download.
Yeah.
I can't record. But I have the fundamental very slow Wi-Fi, so I could still like read texts and social medias and what have you. So I'm like, well, I had to make a decision. Do I just avoid it, not say anything? I was like, no, I want to keep plugging the show and talking about it. I actually just watched Rocky versus Drago today.
What did you watch it on?
On Apple TV here in Canada,
okay.
And I watched it on my 4K big screen 65-inch TV stereo surround, and I'll get into a little bit of that. And it's funny, people quote unquote spoil things or gave their feelings on the cut. I found that it didn't affect my viewing at all. There was nothing. There were some scenes I knew that were going to come, i.e. Apollo and Rocky talking in the yard before they go sit at the dining room table. I knew that scene was coming, but I didn't know the dialogue or how I would think of it when I actually saw it. I knew that Adrian and Rocky were going to have a bit of a discussion before he goes to Russia. Again, I knew that scene was coming, but it hit me really hard when it did come. So we'll save some discussion. I will say right now, so if you're listening to this episode, we're kind of doing the documentary, and I really want to share my thoughts on the documentary, but of course it's going to tie in with some Rocky IV discussion. And I want Craig to share his feelings on Rocky IV freely, meaning I'm going to withhold a little bit of mine because I'm saving mine for the recording I do with Kyle and Katie. But since you're the guest, I want you to share yours freely, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, for people that haven't listened to this Slycast episode, we did a 2-hour plus discussion on the episode. I talked with Mike Kunda, I talked with Doug Greenberg, I talked with Sean Malloy, and we really covered everything there.
I'm sure there was a huge bleed over. I don't think very many people that listen to my show don't listen to yours, but maybe there's a couple. So if that's the case, by all means, I don't think my mom listens to your show, for example. So for my mom, Craig, just for my mom, tell my mom your feelings and thoughts on the Rocky versus Drago.
It's interesting, Ryan, because I appreciate the fact that Sly was able to revisit something that was obviously bothering him for decades. As an artist, as somebody who creates, I've taken the line that, once I release something out to the public, I've released it and I'm done with it. And there's certain filmmakers and artists that can't do that. George Lucas is one of them. Steven Spielberg screwed with E.T. and Indiana Jones, and now Sly sort of made Rocky for the movie he wanted it to be. But so again, I appreciate what he did. I think the director's cut works wonderfully as a through line now. You can sit down and watch that entire series, and it feels like a cohesive, universe. And I still stand by the fact that I feel like Creed 2 was really what motivated Sly to do this. Because I think it's like Creed 2 was almost the equivalent of getting pantsed. Yeah. You made this silly comic book movie, and look what you could have done. Look at the emotional beats that you can hit here. And I don't think Sly will ever admit it. He doesn't admit it in the documentary. But I really do feel like Creed 2, if Creed 2 didn't happen, or if Creed 2 didn't happen the way that it did happen, we wouldn't have been sitting here talking about Rocky versus Drago. And of course, COVID's also one of the reasons we're talking about this, because, Samaritan shutting down is another catalyst for Sly to revisit Rocky versus Drago. But I mean, if we really wanted to get into it, there's so many movies before Rocky IV that I would want Sly to revisit.
Agreed. Yeah, great thoughts. And I want to make it clear, or not clear, sorry, that sounded wrong. I want to make it known that I haven't heard your episode on Slycast yet regarding the Rocky versus Drago cut, obviously, because I just watched it today and I didn't want to hear people's thoughts on it. And also until I record, because it's like everything, like, as a podcaster, you don't want to. I'm sure we're going to hit some of the same beats. You already said in some of the things you've just said here. I was going to say, and that there's nothing revolutionary, i.e. the COVID, the Creed 2. We even speculated on our show before, while this director's cut was being announced, that I figured even then that Creed 2 kind of forced Sly's hand a little bit to reinvestigate the tone of Rocky versus Drago. But I will give a tease right now for our listeners who have to wait for my full analysis. The Rocky versus Drago cut gutted me. I felt like crying about 4 or 5 times. I was surprised by that. And if that was Sly's intent, well, it worked. I wouldn't say depressed isn't the right word. I felt gutted and sad and melancholy. It blew me away. And I'm going to watch it again with now taking notes. I didn't want to take notes the first time viewing it. I just wanted to watch everything. The question was just asked in our Discord. So guys, join our Discord. Okay, I'm going to keep pounding this every episode. What I love about Discord is we get people asking questions during the live recording that adds to the show. And that someone is Michael, who is the host of Hard for Justice on our Last of the Action Heroes podcast network feed. Mike, how's it going? He hasn't seen the cut yet, and he goes, is the new cut that much different? Great question. Yes, and I'm actually surprised, and I'm going to save my discussion points on why and how it's different, of course, for our standalone episode regarding the cut. But I will say it's so different that as I was watching it, because people had asked me before I watched it, they're like, some of my listeners were like, are you going to do a whole season on it like you've done with other, even a shortened season on it? I was like, no. Like, what I'm going to do, a season on a couple deleted scenes inserted into the film. As I was watching it, I'm like, I don't know if I can do just one episode of this. It's that different. So to answer your question, Mike, it is that different. It is a completely different experience. The only thing that's the same is Apollo dies and he fights Drago at the end.
There were 2 things to me that felt like Sly tried to do. One was really take most of the 1985 out of the movie. Right. So it's a movie that was made in 1985, but it doesn't feel like a movie from 1985 anymore.
Totally agree. It strips. The 80s have been stripped. It felt very modern.
Yeah. And then the other thing to me was it felt like, and people have disagreed with me here, but it feels like the Cold War aspect was turned down.
That part where he says, you can change. You notice that the It was obviously an alternate take on the word, on that phrase, everyone can change. He said it very subtly, everyone can change.
Yeah, but then you've also got the proper response from the Russian premiere.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the little things I appreciated, and the fact that Sly brought, and he even talks about it in the documentary, brought 35 years of experience to those fights, and fights are like night and day. And Sly even says it in the documentary that the Rocky IV Drago fight will never be rivaled, something to that effect. He says, I'm not saying this is, being braggadocious or anything. It's just the amount of work that it went into that. And the one thing I really appreciated about this new cut, first of all, the Apollo fight is amazing. It completely reframes that Apollo's experience. And Sir Robert just asked if we love the new punch sound effects. I did appreciate that we didn't get the shotgun blasts. Everything about those punches sounded more natural. And I also love the fact that Apollo fight, like I said, Apollo didn't come out of it looking like a chump, which I think was Sly's intent. But also the fact that, and Sly again talks about it in this documentary, and if nobody's watched it, I hope you watch it after this discussion, he got rid of a lot of those phantom punches that always bother us. They've bothered us in a lot of the movies on, your watch backs. But it's just a matter of cutting the frame a little bit or the angles. One of the things really makes that documentary worth watching is you don't just get Sly's thoughts on Rocky IV.
Mm-hmm.
You get his genuine thoughts as a director. And on Slycast for years, I've been saying it's a shame that Stallone didn't direct more films because he's a director. He's got the mind of a director. He's got the eye of the director. And he talks about it. He talks about not looking directly at somebody, doing those side shots. And he uses Marianne and the crowd as an example. And then he also talks about the punches. It's impossible to cheat a punch when you're in a profile. So you have to do these alternate angles. And there's even scenes where, through technology, he was able to tilt frames. So he gets like Rocky's headspace and Duke's headspace the same by tilting and zooming in. So there really is a lot of great insight from Sly about how he thinks about composing shots and putting shots together. I do think he beats himself up way too much, though. I think he sort of second guesses decisions he made. But the other thing is, in 1985, he was under the gun to turn in a cut of the film. So I think he's a little hard on himself in terms of not forgiving mistakes that he made. There's a pretty funny moment in there where Apollo's saying, I want you, and he doesn't have gloves on, and then in the next shot he does.
He mentioned in the documentary that he never even noticed that film flub, that Apollo had no gloves and gloves at the same time, and they tried in the documentary to cut that out. Again, Rob in our Discord chat, it says it's still there in the final cut. It is a little bit, you could tell they shortened as much as they could. It's like, I only looked for it because I saw the documentary before I saw the film, but had I not seen the documentary before the recut, I wouldn't have noticed that because it was such a quick cut from no gloves to gloves shot. But yeah, Sly, it was fun to watch Sly. Like, I can't believe I've never noticed that before. And he's watched the movie, he said himself, of course, from editing to its release, he's watched it hundreds of times, and he's never noticed that flub until that moment on camera. So that was a nice little moment in the documentary.
Enjoy, Michael. Please don't listen to us while you're watching it. Go enjoy the 92 minutes, and you can come back and listen to this when it hits the
he doesn't want to, he probably doesn't want to get spoiled anymore. I understand. So Michael, let me just plug before you take off. So Michael joined us in Discord. He is from the podcast Hard for Justice, covering the fantastic Steven Seagal with all of his films, and I look forward to hopefully guest hosting with Michael on a Steven Seagal film in the near future. So thanks, Mike. Be safe and enjoy that.
I've sat in a couple episodes and I've had a blast. The cool thing about this is this documentary came out of nowhere, or at least for most of us. I don't know if you had any kind of...
I did. Well, okay. Well, can I tell you how and why?
Well, I know Derek Wayne Johnson edited it, so...
Yeah, so he told me...
I know you guys are buddies.
Yeah, he told me, well in advance that he was working on a project that he couldn't tell me about. To his credit, in case he's listening to this, he did not reveal it. I guess that it has something to do as an extra for the Rocky versus Drago extras, and he lied to me, but he had to for secrecy. But I could tell he was lying, but I didn't browbeat him too hard. Derek Wayne Johnson was the editor of the documentary, and the documentary was shot by John Hertzfeld.
Yeah, no, Sly's good friend, actually, and that's another thing you pick up on the documentary. He directed Sly in Reach Me.
Mm-hmm. And another film.
Oh, did he direct De Niro one? The boxing De Niro one?
No.
Oh.
He directed Escape Plan 3.
Oh, did he? Oh, my goodness.
Which we haven't seen yet. We're going to watch it together. We're going to watch Escape Plan 3 for our Stallone Podcast Network show.
We'll get to talk about that 2, I don't want to watch anything.
We're going to watch part 3. We know we have to.
It was shot on John's iPhone, which in this day and age doesn't really matter.
Right.
That
it's more of a gimmick.
iPhone.
It's more of a gimmick to say.
Yeah. I mean, it looks and feels like a professional documentary.
Right.
The one thing I really appreciated about it was you can tell that they're really good friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think Sly would have been as open as he was without John being the guy that was holding the camera, because John asked some good questions at points. Sly tells some stories I've never heard. He talks about the final Drago fight and the psychology behind it, sort of how in the new cut you see Drago mentally sort of falling apart, even though the physical aspect of him is still there. And Sly tells a story about arm wrestling, a bodybuilder.
Yeah, that was a great story.
In the late 60s. And the way Sly tells it is he beats the guy because, Sly got into a zone. He compares it to being a wolf or something. And he says basically the arm wrestling match meant more to me than it meant to that guy. And that guy thought his physicality was all he needed. And the way Sly describes it is that, like, the guy had a nervous breakdown afterwards because he was beaten by this inferior, or at least to him, inferior specimen. So that's the kind of stuff I really, really enjoyed in this documentary, is when it got away from Rocky IV, because there was a big chunk towards the end where he talked about even how he got into action films. And I thought that aspect of it was fascinating.
I want to tell our listeners, do not sleep on this documentary. I know a lot of people have. I think it's unfortunate. I mean, the documentary itself has almost 870,000 views on YouTube, which is not bad. That's nearing 1 million. Speaking of which, somebody, I don't know who it is, I want to go find out. Somebody actually just literally re-downloaded the documentary on their own YouTube site.
That's terrible. Can you report that?
Am I allowed to report that?
I don't know. I think so. I mean, especially if they have ads on it.
Yeah, good point. Well, remind me, I got to tell you a story. So it's a good story, but I want to save it at the end. So yeah, let me tease. Don't turn off this episode till the end. I actually have a pretty fun story that I've been given permission to share. Craig knows what it is.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll save that for a tease. Talking about his pride, or how proud he was of the Rocky IV final fight between him and Drago, Rocky and Drago. I love that he said that, and it's okay for an artist to say this. If you say, hey, I've got the greatest guitar riff that I think it will never be topped, and you can stand by it, then by all means. I agree with Sly that Rocky IV, especially the cut, the recut version of it, that Rocky IV final fight, is there a boxing fight that could top it? And when you add in the emotion, the music, the energy, and I know people are going to say, well, what about Rocky versus Apollo? I'm not talking about him going the distance in part 1. Yeah. I'm not talking, that kind of emotion. He's on the canvas, stay down, stay down. The music's cued from round 14. I know that's an emotional moment. He's talking about the physical and choreography of this fight.
Technical aspect of it as well, yeah. Total package.
It's a total package. This final fight in Rocky IV, Sly himself has learned how to film fights as each movie's gone on, right? He's gotten better at the craft. Rocky IV's peak, his ability as a filmmaker, and the angles, the shots, the sounds, the sweat, the makeup, it's all there. And the way that these two specimens look. If any of our listeners out there would like to present what they think is a better fight, pound for pound, excuse the pun, I'd like to hear what they think it is.
Another thing that fascinated me was the fact that Dolph person shaped the Drago character in a substantial way. And Sly refers to in the documentary that the original version of Drago was sort of a Neanderthal. After John Hertzfeld introduced him to Dolph, Drago went from being a Neanderthal to sort of the uber-human, which I thought was remarkable. It gave me a greater appreciation of the collaborative side of Stallone. And, a lot of people might be stubborn and not want to change their idea because it's their idea. But here you had Dolph, who's such a physically impressive human specimen and also incredibly intelligent. And to hear Sly speak to that as well, I thought was really great. There was a moment in the documentary where I felt like Sly was speaking to me as a podcaster. And I don't know if you can guess this or not, Ryan.
Okay, let me think. Oh, yeah, okay. I think I know which one it is. Let me guess. This is a great part of the documentary. When he talks about actors not coming prepared to the scene. Well, Craig, do tell. Why did this speak to you, Craig? I would love to hear your reasons.
Because for all of these shows, Slycast, the joint shows we do together, I watch the movie and that's about all I do. I don't take notes. I don't do research. If I do research, it's very minimal, and it's probably while we're talking on air. That was another thing that really fascinated me. After I got past the fact that I felt like Sly was talking directly to me and admonishing me for my philosophy, but when he talked about, how disrespectful it is, believe me, podcasting doesn't cost money. It doesn't cost money to record, whereas in 1985, when you're filming, time is money. Sly's idea that an actor coming to the set unprepared affects everybody. And it's not fair to everybody. And this is more that great directing wisdom from him, where Sly was like, if you get it on the first take, wonderful. And I think he even said that after 3 takes, it's not worth doing anymore.
If it takes you 3 takes and you haven't memorized your lines, he says, if you come prepared with your lines memorized, they can figure out what you need to do with those lines within 3 takes. He says the only excuse would be equipment failure or weather or something like that.
Yeah, which I thought was great, because that also got into his acting process as well, where there's stories about people talking about finding a scene on set, and it sounds like Sly's like, no, you got to do all that prep work beforehand. And I almost wondered what actors he was talking about when he talked about having to have lines taped to his shoulder.
Yeah, I know. To help his fellow actors, he would actually tape cue cards to his shoulder or backside or whatever it is, so the actors could literally read their lines and their scenes if they weren't prepared.
And that he memorized everybody's lines as well.
That's right. He memorized everyone's lines as well, so he would be better prepared for the show itself. When he mentioned that part in the documentary, as he was talking about other actors being prepared, and so when Sly was talking about this, I could tell he was serious. He wasn't trying to be funny. And I've heard this about him from other people that have worked with Sly and have talked to me about Sly, is that when he is in the room, he commands your attention, and he also commands respect, and he's the boss. And I kind of sensed that when he was talking about this. I was feeling a little bit stressed out. I was like, oh man, I don't want to get on his bad side. And I don't mean that he would be mean, but you could tell that he only asks that of others that he is bringing to the table.
Yeah.
But I know Clint Eastwood's got that same style of directing. Clint Eastwood is a one-take director.
You can't argue either way. I mean, really, because if you watch a David Fincher movie and you watch Zodiac, which is, a modern masterpiece, and you say, oh, this scene that we're watching right now, that was Robert Downey Jr.'s 35th take.
Right.
Robert just mentioned the Scorsese does 20. So again, it's process. But I think if everybody has a good understanding of what's expected prior to getting to set, and a director, by all means, should do that. I don't think anybody signs on to a David Fincher movie or signed on to a Kubrick movie, thinking that they were going to be one and done type takes.
Kubrick almost abuses his actors.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, that was the kind of insight that I really appreciated about this documentary. And I do hope, and I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but I really do hope there's a physical release for this Rocky vs. Drago on Blu-ray, where we get this 90-minute documentary as a bonus feature, because that's what I want to own. I want to own that.
Another teaser here. My next podcast that I'm recording, at the time of this recording, I will actually be with Derek. We're going to talk about his editing process, how he worked with Sly editing the documentary, or with John, whatever he wants to reveal. Well, we'll see what I can squeeze out of him.
I wonder if you can speak to or ask him about, Ryan.
Sure, please.
Is how long did Sly actually work on this? You don't really get a sense of it in the documentary.
You don't. Yeah.
You know that they change locations at one point and they go to a proper screening room, and then you see Sly, I guess, in his home theater, is it? Watching the final cut.
That's when he's smoking the cigar and he's watching the final cut.
In January of this year.
Yeah.
But that's another thing. That screening room, see all of the pictures of him with other celebrities. Then there's earlier in the documentary where I think it's his office, where you see all of the Rocky. It only rivals probably Kunda's collection in terms of being exhaustive. I mean,
incredible stuff in that. I'd love to walk through his house, see that stuff.
It's also funny to see him eat those little those little lollipops where they
What were those lollipops?
I think it was like a toffee. It seemed so un-Sly to me, but he explains it as sort of being like a nervous thing, I think. And then he's got like the thing that you clip lights on with or clip curtains with. and he's using that.
Yeah, he's squeezing. He's always got the workout. He's squeezing the hand grip thing. That's a hand grip of some sort.
I think they're sugar daddies.
Is that what it is?
It looks a lot like a sugar daddy. I don't know if that's what he... Sugar daddy is a delicious milk caramel pop.
When I watched this documentary, they showed bloopers in the documentary. So if you haven't seen the documentary, just go watch it alone for about 4 or 5 bloopers. We actually see a scene of Drago laughing. Of course, it's Dolph Lundgren laughing, but to see him break character and laugh, it's hilarious. And also when Burt Young is talking about being the silent majority or whatever, Sly breaks out laughing because of Burt Young's delivering of the line. It's great to see what really is, especially in this recut, is a really intense film, dark drama in many ways. Seeing the characters break, it's always kind of fun to see. Oh yeah, it's just a movie. Everyone's having fun on set. Everyone's friends. What is your feeling on the deletion of the robot and the deletion of his ex-wife?
I'm not a fan of either. I think there was a way to maintain the robot without things coming off cheesy. I don't think you had to excise it completely, because I think there was a couple of sequences that suffered. Especially the stuff with his son. His son is really in a reduced role in this movie, and that kind of makes Rocky 5 work a little bit better, because you can see that don't get that big I love you moment at the end of Rocky 4. I think there's a way Sly could have figured it out. Like in this day and age, there's technology. You couldn't digitally paint out the robot for some scenes, especially his son watching the final fight. Depending on which side of the argument you want to take, you could say that Ludmilla was reduced because Drago had a voice in this movie. He was able to speak for himself.
There's obviously Rocky nerds more than me, and I definitely noticed where things were missing. But I feel like Drago in some ways still talked as much or barely a little bit more. Like, yes, he mentioned, "Thou shalt know my name, I am Draga. Other than that, I don't know why they didn't keep the scene, for example, where Ludmilla says to Marianne, after this, why can't we be friends? Why not? They're just boxers, not soldiers. So why did he cut that out?
I 100% think it's because it's his ex-wife.
Yes, I know.
And he either did it out of petty spite, unconsciously or consciously. I mean...
Because if he is, and this is me speaking with the utmost respect for Mr. Stallone, is it because it's his ex-wife? Like, let's say they never got married. That's the version I want to see. I know it sounds crazy. How much of his art was clouded by his feelings on his ex-wife? Now, don't get me wrong. Bridget Nielsen has some crappy things about him recently. I think just as early as 2 years ago, she said in an interview that he was a horrible husband.
If we want to do our research and a deep dive on Brigitte Nielsen, there's a lot of stuff we're going to find out about her that
she's nuts.
Paints her as a less than great person. I read a letter from a listener and former guest of the show, Steve Ricardo, who, is big in the fan film community. There's going to be probably multiple cuts of Rocky 4 out there where people take, they make these Frankenstein cuts.
Yes.
And we'll probably get the ultimate Rocky 4 cut that includes everything.
I think I've heard that. I think... or saw somebody tag that, or whatever you want to call it, like release the ultimate Rocky, because you could almost keep what Sly, of course, has done with the recut, but insert the robot, insert Bridget Nielsen's lines and everything. It would take a bit of work, but there are people out there who did it with the Star Wars films, where they've taken out Jar Jar, for example. So people know how to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That's funny, Robert. Robert says he's seen the movie like 500 times and never knew her name was Ludmilla.
Hey,
I think that's a Creed 2 thing, right? It wasn't really 100%, I wouldn't refer to her as Ludmilla until after Creed 2.
Hey, that's the kind of high-tier podcasting I do on this show. This is why people come by the tens and tens and listen to my podcast.
Yeah.
You mentioned before, but I want to reiterate, I like how Sly was talking about COVID, and it's interesting to watch Sly talk about COVID and also wear a mask. I know that seems weird. Well, of course, Ryan, he's human on the planet. Is this kind of weird to see your screen heroes, so to speak, be affected by the same world that we live in as peons? You know what I mean? So it's just kind of weird to see Sly wearing the mask and talking about COVID. It's like, I guess it affects everybody, even our screen heroes. Watch it. Watch the documentary if you haven't. It really is good. Of course, Craig and I didn't share every beat for beat because we want people to watch it. The wisdom that Sly shares, like Craig said, is amazing. He gives us some life lessons. And one of the life lessons that he gives at the end, which I really liked, he talks about the one thing that we should all work for, we should all have at the end of our life. What makes a person good, or what makes a person a good part of society, isn't being an actor or a sports athlete or this stuff. It's just having dignity in your life. That's something he values, is somebody with dignity. I think he probably feels like he hasn't done that his whole life. And I think in some ways he talks about how this movie experience, for him to re-edit, it's like re-editing your life. And so I think just like how Sly has done in all of his films, and we've talked about this a million times, how the Rocky films mimic his real life. And I find it highly ironic and very telling and very almost story-like that even now, at this age of 75, we're seeing Sylvester Stallone, the actor and human, re-editing his life, so to speak, that he is not the same person that he was when he made Rocky IV. He's now a 75-year-old Sly, re-editing his life through the film and showing not only what he would have done had he had the mind then of a 75-year-old into a 40-year-old body. But I think it's just very telling and very humbling and interesting to see somebody who's worth $500 million, has 14 million fans on his Instagram, is saying, you know what? There's things I should have done different. There's things I should have done different. And I think he's not just talking about the film. I think he's talking about re-editing your life. So this is kind of a call to us, maybe younger people who aren't 75 yet. It's not too late. How do you see yourself 30 years from now? Are you happy with what you're doing now? Now is your chance to edit your life as you're going along. That's my little wisdom.
It did make me a little sad because I couldn't help but think about Sage.
Yeah, I know.
And even his other son, when he was saying all that, you can't get inside somebody's head and think about what they're thinking. Right. I almost wonder if subconsciously, that was kind of what he was thinking about. In terms of biggest regrets in someone's life, I'd imagine things that happen with your children are probably pretty high up on that list. I can't speak to that. I'm not a father. But again, watch the documentary. As a Sly fan, watch it. If you're at all interested in the process of filmmaking, watch it. And as a fan of Rocky IV, watch it. Because, like Ryan said, you get to see some great behind-the-scenes stuff. And one thing I did love, Ryan, was when he's watching the screening at his house, the copy that he's watching is printed to his name. Right. Meaning that when they sent out these screeners, this one said Sylvester Stallone, property of MGM Films or whatever. But I'm like, so if it did get leaked or whatever, they'd be able to trace it back to Sly.
That's hilarious. I know. Yeah.
I'm curious. I don't know if Derek will know this or not, but curious how that was delivered. Was it on media? Was it a streaming link he was given? Or I'd assume it was probably on a disc.
Yeah, I'll ask.
I don't think
I'm
he was.
Sure
Yeah, I don't
given
think
to Sly was given to Derek. Because the question I'm going to have for Derek, is like, what didn't we see? What can he tell us of scenes that maybe he could tell us? Because there's things left on the editing room floor. I wonder how much he was involved with Sly, of course. What does Sly say? Like, no, I don't want that. Even if you can't tell me the scene, I'd be curious to see where Sly's like, no, I shared too much there.
You know what? That brings up a good point, because it seemed to me, Ryan, there was a point while he was getting ready to watch the cut, and John says, if you weren't going back to Samaritan, would you still be working on this? And Sly basically says, you're never really done. It made me think about, and I don't know if you noticed this in your viewing of the director's cut, it seems like more focus and attention could have been brought to getting those deleted scenes to look more integrated into the film. Did you notice that the deleted scenes, the color grading, or
yeah? Because I was watching my 4K, and I don't know why I guess the raw footage, I don't know how it's done or how it's filtered or how it's managed, but you could tell kind of which scenes were new. It was almost like, this is the new scene just by the visual display.
Yeah, like I don't know if they just didn't have the money to do a full restoration on those film elements.
Yeah.
But that was something that kind of disappointed me, and it almost makes me wonder that if Sly either had more time or more money from MGM to do it, that you would have got restoration type stuff done to that film.
I'll ask Derek what he understands. Being a filmmaker himself, he might understand maybe what the limitations were for Sly.
Yeah. But I'm looking forward to that discussion, Ryan.
Yeah. It's going to be released kind of shortly after this one, so people don't have to wait too long. I am interviewing him tomorrow morning at the time of this recording. Okay, so here we go. You ready? You guys waited long enough. Everyone's like, oh boy, I want to hear this great story by Ryan. Yay. Knowing that I was going to do this discussion with Craig, and Doug wanted to be here with us today, I just wanted to say that as well. Doug from the Rocky Minute podcast, which is on season 3 now, Rocky 3, which is very exciting.
Before you tell your stories, it looks like Pop Styles dropped into the chat.
Yes, that's Louise. That's Louise.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, cool. I know his little avatar on Facebook.
He's a character. He guest hosted on a whim yesterday on the Creed 2 episode 10. We actually lost the co-host there as well, and he said, I'll come in, and he did a great job.
You know what's funny? I think there was either Twitter or Facebook thread, Ryan, about that new episode where somebody kept referring to Adonis as Little D.
Yes, yeah, that's
and that
Miguel.
cracked me up.
That's Miguel. Shout out to Miguel. He, it's funny. I got a few. I admit the numbers for not that I like to talk about numbers because it's not important, but it's just something to track. I've said it before on the show that the numbers for Creed 2 are a little bit lower than any of my other past seasons because I think people just don't like Creed 2 or the Creed films as much as they like the Rocky films, and I can understand that. But as a completist, I got to finish it if that makes sense. But so here we go. So. In preparation, of course, for this, I had to watch the documentary. So I thought to myself, if I'm going to watch the documentary, why don't I just record myself watching it like a reaction video and post it on my Going the Distance YouTube page? I knew I'd get like 5 viewers, and I don't have very many viewers of that channel in general. But I was like, I'll just put it out there. I can record it. If there's any sound bites that I say while I'm watching it, maybe I'll use it for this recording that we're doing now. But I didn't have to. I uploaded it to YouTube. And I got a message from somebody. Now, I can't say who this person is, so you can either believe me or not believe me. That's fine. But let me just say that I've interviewed this person on my channel or on my podcast. He is somebody that has Sly on speed dial. If you really want to know, you could probably guess, but it's probably not who you think either. So put it that way. I'll leave it at that. But it's somebody that I've interviewed, somebody that has a video of himself with Sly on YouTube, and that's as much as I'll say. Somebody just asked in the Discord, and I'll just say no. That's all I'm going to give you. So
I don't even know who that is. BC.
You can't say that. Now I get.
Well, okay.
Okay, we actually, yeah. Well, Rob, who is BC actually? Because I know the initials of who I'm talking about. So. As we go on here, so this individual messaged me and he said, "Hey, I saw your reaction on the documentary on YouTube and I really enjoyed it." And oh no, he thinks it's Bill Conti. No. Bill Conti doesn't watch YouTube. Come on, I can keep this. Come on. Yeah, a little shout out to my my greatest interview ever, Bill Conti. Yes, Bill Conti and I do not talk to each other. I will just say, I've interviewed a few people that have like Sly on speed dial and they talk to Sly regularly. They talk to me too, if that makes sense. That's my 1 degree of separation from Sly, but I've never talked to Sly. That being said, he goes, "Hey, I enjoyed your little reaction to the video." And I'm like, "Oh, it's kind of embarrassing." Because it really is kind of embarrassing. I was like, "Yeah, I just thought I would do it for fun, whatever." He goes, "No, it was good." And I enjoyed it so much that I made a little clip from it and I sent it to Sly. I hope that's okay. I'm like, "What?" So I said, "Well, can you show me the clip you sent?" And he showed me the clip he sent. It was one of my parts where I'm talking because I'm responding in the video to to what Sly's saying. So I'm kind of talking to Sly during the video, right? And I said, "Oh, that's kind of cool." He goes, "Yeah, Sly enjoyed it so much that he's watching the whole thing." I'm like,
it's amazing.
It's crazy amazing. And I'm like, "You're kidding." He goes, "Nope, he's watching, he's enjoying it. In fact, he's asked me to send him a few more clips. Now, don't get your hopes up," he says. "It might go on Instagram." And I'm like, "Okay, that's a true story." Now, this has been a few days, and it hasn't gone on Instagram. I doubt it's going to go on. But that doesn't matter. He goes, "Sly knows who you are, and he's enjoying something you've done." I said, "That's crazy." To me, that is the most amazing thing I've heard during this podcast, doing this podcast. I know I'll never talk to Sly. I kind of know that. I don't expect to, I should say, because it's Sly, right? It was very humbling to hear this because, I've watched Sly for decades and I've watched all of his movies. I know I can be irreverent sometimes. I know that I can say silly things, but I make fun of my own kids, okay? So do I make fun of Sly sometimes? Of course I do. I make fun of my own, family. That's what you do with family. I feel like I'm comfortable with him if I might tease something during our reviews. I've done like 500 hours of podcasting about one person. Jokes will come out. And I only say that because I know I wouldn't say accused, but I've been called out for being maybe irreverent regarding Sly, and I never mean to be hurtful. But what I'm trying to say is that I love this guy. He's my number one actor, screen hero is what I call it, because I know we're all human. At the end of the day, we all do stupid things outside of film or outside of our jobs, right? But the point is that the fact that he saw something that I made, and it's such a stupid thing. It's such a stupid thing that I did, meaning like I feel silly almost that he watched it. But the fact that he saw it and enjoyed what I had to say, that to me is kind of makes this podcasting that I've done all this time kind of worthwhile, because it's like, oh, that's crazy. Sly watched me on something. And yeah. So out of my 70 views on that video, if you can watch it, go to the Going the Distance page. One of them is Sly. So,
that was genuinely made my heart feel good when I heard that story from you, Ryan. And I think everybody that's part of this Stallone podcasting community should take pride in the fact that we've sort of helped amplify or elevate, his work. And at the same time, we haven't slavishly acted as apologists for him. We've called him out when he's done stupid shit. When it comes to film, we're analyzing cinematic end of his person, you know?
Right.
And I don't think you can be a fan of somebody if you're not willing to call them out when there's stupid shit going on. But either way, again, what a great special moment that was for you, Ryan, and I'm so glad that you experienced that.
Yeah, and I really wish I could publicly thank this guy, but he didn't say keep my name out of it. I just asked him, can I share this story but not put your name in there? And he said, go ahead. So I have to honor that, and I assume that's the condition, because I just want to... I want to give him a big thank you, and I told him 100 times, I said, I'm very humbled that you even... Because I would never ask. I've never asked any of these gentlemen, whether it's... I've never... Though they have Sly on speed dial, and I've worked with them closely, I've never once asked them to say, hey, can you tell them about me? It was very humbling when did that for me, and they just said, hey, I did this for you, if that's okay. Not for you. I did this. They did it because they wanted to, which to me was almost more humbling, yeah.
Well, I was like, wow, they were watching your shit, man, which is awesome.
Yeah, I can't believe somebody actually watched it. I was like, when I say I'm embarrassed, it's like I don't tell anybody that I do this at work or something. I don't want anyone to know that I do this stuff.
Yeah.
Because they see my face in public, right?
Well, that's the thing, Ryan. I think that experience could almost make an argument for making podcasts have a video element to them. Because if it was something you download to your phone and listen to, how are they going to send that to Sly?
Yeah, good point.
One other thing that was cool, I don't know how much of it you saw based on you were out to see, but Vince DiCola got invited to the premiere in Philly, and he posted a lot of stuff when he was there in Philly.
Yeah.
To me, it felt like it was something that Vince really, really appreciated. And I know he's always felt the love from the fans, but it almost felt like the fact that he was extended this invite from Sly was special for him. I don't know, for some reason, it just made me feel really good.
Yeah, I like Vince. He was a great interview. I'm still mad that you got him before me, even though I asked him like 6 months before you. But that's okay.
I had an in.
That's fine. No, it was a joke. I called him out on it too. It's like I messaged you on Facebook there, Mr. DiCola, and you took my buddy over me. But no, that's great.
I think both interviews are good.
Absolutely.
And we both have a different approach to interviewing, and it's just remarkable to me that we've both talked to Rocky composers, and you've talked to the greatest Rocky composer, and we'll say this every time
You're too
I
kind.
have an opportunity to say it, is you did the definitive Bill Conti interviews.
Thank you.
It's the truth, man. I mean, you're able to do something as an interviewer that I can't do. I'll leave it at that.
I asked some powerball questions, you could say. Yeah. All right. Well,
I'm the puff piece guy.
No, that's all right. Well, this has been an absolute joy. I feel like we just keep on talking to people on the podcast. Like, oh my gosh, guys, wrap this up. I just miss talking to Craig. I haven't talked to him since I left, so I feel like it was talking to an old friend. So anyways, thanks everyone for joining us on Discord. Again, look at the show description notes to see where you can join us on Discord and be a part of the actual chat when these podcasts are made from all the people that are a part of the Last of the Action Heroes podcast network. Again, we have a new show coming onto the network, the Mel Gibson podcast called Hugging the Cactus. It will be hosted by Seiko, the hardest critic of our shows. He hates all of our shows. I think the only show that he likes is the Drunk Bond podcast, which is fair. He's pretty funny. So Seiko's got to put his money where his mouth is because he keeps calling us out. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. But he's asked me to co-host with him on the Mad Max movies. I'm looking forward to that.
I believe I am going to be doing Lethal Weapon with him. So
Doug's doing Braveheart.
I also did say I want to do Machete 2 as well.
Ooh,
no, Seiko is one of my earliest, I think one of the earliest Slycast listeners I interacted with. So it's going to be interesting to see those worlds collide, where he goes from being a listener to a host.
Well, it's interesting. We talk about influencing people. He's actually doing the podcast because of us. I think we maybe drove him mad and said, I'm going to do this right.
But either way, Robert, do you want to do Wesley Snipes?
Yeah, Wesley Snipes is still open. Yeah, we need some representation. All right.
Although I will say the 6 Degrees guys, they sort of have an umbrella where they covering everything. I think right now they're covering Street Fighter.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. That's good stuff.
All right. I know we can stay here all night.
No, it's fine. I love it. I just want to, again, if you want to send me an email, it's gtdwithrr@gmail.com. Yeah, that's it. I'll take us out with a ding, ding.